Now, Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug, always liked to dig. It's what he did, and his parents were surprised. Now, you would have thought with a name like Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug, that they'd thought that he would have dug. But what happened was, one day his mum had a bag of shopping in her right hand and a bag of shopping in her left hand, and she had Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug in a child's sling in front of her, and she couldn't get her keys and she couldn't get the door open, so she put the right hand bag down and she put the left hand bag down, and she unstrapped Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug, and she put him down. She put him down on the piece of grass outside of the front door. And she went and got a key, opened up the door, but while she was opening up the door, that little baby reached behind him and he started to dig as hard as you like, and he pulled up the grass and he looked as if he'd made a soil angel there on the grass, and his mother looked and she laughed. "Oh, Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug, just look at you, the way that you dig." You would have thought that they would have thought that he was going to dig with all the Dougs and Digs and Diggers in his name, but they were surprised. And that night, when his dad came home, she put him down upon the grass, and sure enough, he pulled up the grass and the soil, and everybody laughed. And his uncles and aunts and cousins all came to watch him. Because as soon as you put him down, Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug would dig. It's what he did. And his parents were surprised. But they wanted to keep their garden good and clean and tidy and filled with flowers and trees. But this little boy, who was always called Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug, you couldn't call him Digby or Digger or Doug. He was always called by his full name, which made it very difficult to call him in for tea, or when he was having the milk was being monitored at school, or it was the lunch register. But even so, everyone would want him to stop digging, but he didn't. He dug up the flowers, he dug up the trees, he dug up the plants, he dug up the lawn, and soon there was nothing left for him to dig, and his mother and father didn't think it was so funny when Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug always wanted to dig. But one time, they went down by the side of the sea where the sand was soft and filled with shells, and he started to dig. And he didn't dig up any plants, and he didn't get rid of any trees or any lawns. He just kept digging, and the tide would come and the wind would come and make it all go flat again, and Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug could start to dig again. So his mother and father thought it would be a good idea to come and live by the side of the soft shell sand sea, and that's just what they did. And when he'd been at school and when he came home, he would start to dig, and the wind would blow and the tide would come and make it all go flat. But this was a boy who didn't just dig with a small spade and a small little pail. Oh, not him. He took a garden spade. He took a huge bucket. He even had a little digger, a battery-powered digger that he would take down to the beach, and Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug would always like to dig. And it didn't matter by the side of the sea. He made the best and the deepest of pits that you ever did see. He made the highest and tallest of sand castles and always won. But one summer, there he was by the side of the sea, and they shouted him to come and have his tea, which was going to be egg and tomato sandwiches. But in Diggory Douglas, Diggory Douglas's, in his case, his hands were always covered with sand, so there were egg and tomato and sand sandwiches. He would crunch at them. He'd been taken away from all of his digging, and back he went down to the side of the sea, and the great big pit and the huge sandcastle had gone. He looked all around, and he couldn't see anybody anywhere, and he wondered what had happened, because the rain hadn't come down, the wind hadn't blown, and the sea hadn't come in to wash the sand flat and clear. But there was always another day. So off they went down to the sea the very next day, and Diggory Douglas, Diggory Doug started to dig, and they called him to come and have his egg and tomato and sand sandwiches. And when he'd gone back, they were gone. He couldn't see anybody anywhere. There was nobody there. But it was as he looked, he saw that there was a girl who had sand on her hands and her fingers. And not only that, she had a huge smile on her face. He looked at her and said, "I've been digging holes down by the side of the sea. Did you see the holes that I've dug?" "Oh, yes," said the girl. "Do you know what happened to them?" And the girl looked at him and said, "Oh, yes, I do." He said, "Well, what did you do?" "Oh, I made sure that the sand was flat again, and there were no great big holes, and there were no huge sandcastles." "What did you do that for? It had taken me all morning to dig those." "Oh, I like to fill in holes," said the girl. "What's your name?" said Diggory Douglas Diggory Doug. She smiled. "My name's Philomena Phyllis Philful, and I like to fill holes in." Diggory Douglas Diggory Doug screamed for his mother and father. They came down, they looked and said, "Our Diggory Douglas Diggory Doug, where have all the holes gone?" And Philomena Phyllis Philful smiled and said, "It was me. I filled them all in." The mother and father found out what her name was, and they started to laugh. "You mean you like to fill holes in, and he likes to dig them?" Diggory Douglas Diggory Doug's father had a very good idea and a smile. He looked and he said, "Come with me." They took them back to his garden. He said, "Diggory Douglas Diggory Doug, dig a hole there." And in his hand he had a small tree that he'd been trying to plant for ages. Diggory Douglas started to dig, and before Philomena Phyllis Philful had a chance to fill it in again, he put the tree inside of the hole and flattened it all down as she filled all of the hole in. "I've got an idea," said Diggory Douglas Diggory Douglas's father. "I think that you two should become gardeners." Their two gardens were the best that you've ever seen, not filled with holes or as flat as sand by the side of the sea. And the two of them grew up and were bigger and taller and did become the best gardeners in all of the town, down by the side of the soft shell sand sea. And they've got a van. But I've got to tell you something. It's the longest van that you ever did see, because they had to write all of the names on the side of the van, and it says Diggory Douglas Diggory Doug and Philomena Phyllis Philful, gardeners to the world.